And now, it's time for another episode of 20 Questions with your host, Peter Hazelwood.
Hello, today it's my pleasure to welcome the noble artist himself, Jamie Noble-Frier, who amongst other things has designed and published his own board game. That's Hero Master, an epic game of epic fails. He's done artwork for a number of published games, and he is also the co-founder of DoodleMeeple, a new platform for creatives such as artists, sculptors, and game developers, and much more, frankly, but I couldn't write much longer intro. Welcome, Jamie, and thank you for joining me.
Thanks very much for having me, Peter. I appreciate the time to kind of come and have a chat with you and speak to your audience as well. So, yeah, and a great intro as well. I think you covered it all.
Well, I've got to be careful when I write these intros because I want to give a little bit of info about you, but I don't want to then spoil the whole thing.
Yeah, no, of course, yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll try and come up with something new when we go through the questions and see what we come up with.
That's cool. So yeah, that's quite a CV you've got there for such a young person, and we'll touch on all of these topics.
Maybe a little younger than I am.
Questions.
Sure.
Okay, little icebreaker then. So first up, please tell us where you're based and what you do with all of the spare time that you clearly have when not designing games, creating artwork, or managing web platforms. Because I take it that the Jon Snow lookalike work has eased off a bit these days.
It has a bit, yeah. Ever since, kind of like the series kind of finished. Hopefully, there's going to be a spin-off apparently, so maybe I'll get more work from that. But Jon Snow's let himself go a bit. Well, I work and live in Horsham. So, funnily enough, I used to work from home until lockdown, and then as soon as lockdown kicked in, I moved out of home because that's when the family kind of seemed to just all congregate around my desk all the time. So I moved to a shared office space, which has been quite good. They're very COVID kind of cautious, so that's been quite good. But yeah, no, when I'm not kind of doing kind of the whole designing board games thing, or doing art for board games, or running DoodleMeeple, or I also have a shop for kind of geeky stuff too, which is kind of greetings cards, which are orientated to board games and D&D players and stuff. So when I'm not doing that stuff, it's kind of like, the thing I like to do is just hang out with the family, really. I sort of, I think I've got two kids, two young kids, and my other half as well. So we kind of just tend to sort of try and just get a bit of kind of sort of spare time. So kind of like Horsham's lovely for kind of, sort of nature walks and stuff, and so that sort of thing. So I'd like to say it's kind of all for inspiration, but I think it's just for a bit of a break, So I would love to say that I got to play as many games as I should play, kind of based in the industry that I'm in. I feel like kind of when you start a career in the games industry, you think, I'll be playing all the games, I'm going to try the new stuff, it's going to be amazing. And then you are consumed by the work from doing it. But the only times you get to go and try stuff is kind of little taster sessions at conventions and bits and pieces. I still try and, with COVID as well, it's been difficult to kind of get the sort of games group together. And actually, unfortunately, the one in Horsham kind of closed down just before COVID. But it's that's something I'm on the lookout for. My business partner and I have already planned. He's just moving to Wales today, in fact. The other founder from DoodleMeeple. So. Sort of away from Sussex, so that's going to sort of be a long distance relationship now, and we're kind of sort of obviously we've got all the means to be able to kind of like get together on internet stuff, but our plan is already booked in to go to Warhammer World together
Nice.
when we get the opportunity, which I've never been to before. So and that's kind of like a bit of a dream come true. Plus, I just got a contract working for Cubicle 7, working on the Warhammer IP, so for me that's a big deal. Yeah, it's like for me, like I was trying to explain it to my family. It's sort of like for me that's like the pinnacle, like a comic book fan, like getting a Marvel job. Like for me, like working for like Warhammer 40k and stuff like that is like the equivalent. So I was very, very pleased.
Okay, well, how do you find it having to wear so many different hats, even just within your board game related projects?
For me, I don't know if it's kind of like the stereotypical kind of like artist creative thing where kind of sort of like you don't really have a plan, you just throw yourself at it and just kind of see what happens sort of thing. But I think that's kind of an entrepreneurial kind of like mindset as well. So I think I think the concept that kind of like perfect is the enemy of kind of like completion, right? Kind of like or whatever that phrase is along those lines. Essentially, I think kind of like if you try and plan too much, then nothing goes to plan, kind of like, and you can end up being quite disappointed.
So I'm interested to hear how you came to be actually so involved in the board game industry. So sort of how did you get into it?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I guess I'm interested. I'm interested to find out kind of if you ask this question to all the people you have on the show, that'd be interesting to see the answers to it, because I'm sure a lot of people will just say they kind of fell into it. Like I've always liked board games. I've always liked, as I said, like kind of Warhammer was a big sort of part of my life when I was a kid and stuff. So sort of tabletop kind of war games and stuff. And then when you start to realise that not that many people want to want to play war games with you, you kind of scale back and you're like, well, what kind of board games is a good middle ground? And then you find these kind of strategy board games. And when I was playing the war games, I thought kind of like it was like Monopoly or Warhammer. And if you don't like Warhammer, kind of like, I'll take Monopoly. Okay, cool. And then kind of as I grew older and kind of like had a bit more expendable income, I realised that there's like kind of like natural progression was to risk, and then sort of like it's like, oh, actually there's actually significantly more kind of like strategic games than risk. Okay, cool. And then kind of break out from there and stuff. And then by the time I'd finished university and was living with friends and stuff, we were having like regular board game nights and stuff, and kind of introducing new games to that all the time. And that was cool. And by that point, I'd actually kind of like gone from working in restaurants as a restaurant manager, which was cool, and I really enjoyed talking to people, so that's kind of like a really sort of was a big draw for me. But I was not great at kind of the paperwork side of things, which is why my business partner works really well, because he's much more techie and kind of like business minded in that sense than I am. I'm more of a kind of like I like the creative and the chatting to people side of things. So I kind of went from that to going back into art, which is what I had studied at college a long time ago. I'd been to art college and kind of had sort of been told, even by tutors, that there's no jobs in art. Like kind of like you're never gonna find like a job in art. It's kind of sort of like fortunately I didn't take that personally. Anyway, kind of fortunately I met my wife, who encouraged me to do what I wanted to do when I was working at the restaurant, and I went back, and I was lucky enough to have a little bit of savings to kind of fall back on and retrain a bit in game design, which was actually video game design. And did a lot of concept art and stuff on one particular module, which really got back into it. Got a job in video games for a while. Got a couple more jobs in London doing work on video games. And to be honest, I had these aspirations to kind of like to do things on my own. You know, kind of. So I wanted to make my own thing. And I knew video games. I couldn't program because I'm not technically minded enough to do that. But I can do kind of art, and I really enjoyed the kind of like the whole kind of gaming thing, kind of sort of like sort of designing rules and stuff. I had pads and pads and pads and pads of games that are never going to get made. That was that. But yeah, working with in video games, I kind of just decided that kind of the analog side of things would be an easier feat to be able to kind of probably do as a smaller outfit, even if it was like me and someone else. I'd actually tried to make video games just with me and a couple of other people before, and it's such a grand feat. I mean, sort of like, I know making a board game, it took me 5 years to make Hero Master, but it takes ages because you've got so many kind of different things and then testing and stuff. And with a board game, you can kind of sort of like, it's all there in front of you, you know, kind of like you can sort of test it yourself and all that sort of stuff. And so that's kind of the reason I kind of sort of fell into it. And really kind of my clients started going that way, and I left my job as an artist for the video game company, and really just started taking on clients in board games.
Did you always intend to self-publish, or did you approach existing publishers first?
I did. I intended to self-publish from the start. I was very lucky in the fact that I met Gonzalo from Thundergriff Games, just as like, you know, right place, right time again. And I sort of kind of think that kind of, you know, if you put yourself out there enough, it seems like right place, right time, but you're just literally, it's a numbers game, right? Kind of like you are making loads more relationships. You are kind of like, you're putting yourself out there more and more and more and more and more. And eventually, like kind of, you know, the right people do turn up to kind of help you out and stuff. And Gonzalo, for some reason, just started to mentor me through the entire process, and it was incredible. Kind of, you know, he basically did sort of ran all the numbers with me and stuff, which, as I've already sort of said, it was my difficult kind of you know, difficulty that I had being more of a kind of a creative minded person. Even to the point where on the sort of like the day of launch a Kickstarter, I was on the phone to him like, "Oh my god, I've screwed this up. I've kind of like the numbers are all wrong. I'm gonna lose my house." Like kind of like, he's like, "It's fine. You are absolutely fine. We've been through it 1,000 times." As I said to you, kind of like when I left the video games industry, it was because I wanted to do something for myself and start to build something I feel so much more kind of passionate working, you know, in sort of, you know, for myself essentially, but kind of sort of like for like one-to-one relationships with the kind of like the publishers I work with and what have you, than working for kind of bigger companies I've worked for in the past, where it kind of sort of feels that your net effect on what's going on is very, very minimal. You know, kind of sort of, and at times can be frustrating because you sort of feel like maybe it doesn't really impact anything that goes on, you know, kind of like, whereas doing things on your own or doing things in smaller kind of companies and stuff really does. And it's so that's really exciting. So yeah, no, and I'm pleased I did, even though we briefly kind of have chatted about it in the past about kind of sort of how it's quite scary doing self-publishing. You know, kind of like a lot can go wrong, but if you do enough research and kind of like, you know, I think that's the thing. I think kind of like you need to realize it's the same as anything. Kind of sort of like it's a business and you're taking a business risk. And if you do the right research and you put the work in, then there's no reason why it shouldn't work. You know, kind of like so, and that's what I am very fortunate that Gonzalo encouraged me to do. So I still owe that guy a lot. So yeah, pleased to have met him.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, yeah, I've got people who've definitely played that sort of mentor role with me. So, but even with that, you will still have found challenges with the process. So, was the whole thing easier or more difficult than you could have imagined?
It was not easier than I thought it would be. It was much harder. I genuinely think I was closest to a breakdown than I've ever been when I it was during the Kickstarter, and it was this kind of sort of like, I've never felt the world slow down as much. Like it felt like everything went like sort of like surreal. You know, kind of like where those sort of like scenes in like a, I don't know, like a sports movie or something, where the kind of like the final kind of throw of the game and everything just slows down. It just went like that, kind of like I saw the kind of like ticker coming in, but kind of like something snapped in my mind where I was sort of like, I've done this wrong, and then kind of I just couldn't get out from underneath it for about 3 days, despite kind of sort of being over the moon about everything kind of sort of like kind of, you know, happening, and it kind of like, you know, I was really pleased with the way the campaign went, but yeah, in the background I was sort of like just so much self-doubt, like kind of like, and I think that's probably key, is sort of like you stand in the way of your own success, you know, kind of sort of like the only person who can stop you is you, right? Kind of like, because and that almost happened there. It kind of like, you know, if I didn't have the right people around me to kind of to encourage me and sort of see me, and also Adam from Grimble Games was very good at the time as well. Kind of like he was someone I pretty much called every day just to kind of sort of check in with and kind of like sanity check stuff, which was really great. So kind of like having people around you to do things, and I think because if you have done it, you know how stressful it can be. That you can kind of just be there and just listen to people kind of, you know, their concerns and worries and stuff. So I think kind of like, yeah, if I could advise anyone who is thinking of doing it, and this is not to deter anyone doing it, because I think it's amazing, and I'm kind of like, you know, it was a profitable thing as well. Let's not kind of beat around the bush. That's what kind of like a business is there for, right? To earn profit. It was a profitable thing, and it was a lot of work. And I think kind of like, it's up to you whether kind of like, you know, I think the more effort you put in, the more you'll kind of reap in terms of the business. And I think I tried to do a lot. I mean, I was doing kind of interviews, like kind of like 2 or 3 interviews a day at one point, kind of like trying to sort of around my day job as well, trying to finish up a lot of work. And I think when the Kickstarter kind of finished, I think I'd actually just cleared all of my clients at that point, to then just have a period of kind of like organisation stuff. And even then, like kind of like, as you know, like kind of like the age-old thing that kind of like Kickstarters never kind of land on time and all that sort of stuff, and I was going to be the guy that broke the mold. I was going to be that guy who kind of like who had it early. It wasn't going to be late. It was going to be early, and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, mine was, I think, sort of 6-7 months late. That said, yeah, I don't think any stage of it was easier than I thought it was going to be. I think the bit that I was probably most surprised at was the community side of things. I think kind of sort of like made, like, not necessarily easier, but most rewarding and most kind of sort of like empowering, that probably made it feel easier, was when you feel that you've got people behind you and stuff. So not only did I have like Gonzalo and Adam kind of in my ear, kind of like, you know, alleviating any concerns that I had, but also having a crowd of people, and you get a kind of couple of really you know, sort of kind of backers with conviction
like
on what you're doing, then Yeah, super fans. Yeah, and like kind of sort of like, and I hope they don't kind of think that I'm sort of saying that in a negative way. I mean, kind of sort of like people who genuinely kept you getting up, like getting back online and answering questions, this, that, and the other and stuff. Because, and even helping out, kind of sort of like, there's another guy in the community. He's not kind of directly working in the community, but a guy called Stan who helped me from Belgium. He helped me test the game to start off with, but. Yeah, kind of like he was on there answering questions about the game when I was in bed, or kind of, and just amazing.
You preempted one of my questions there, which was going to be about top tips for would-be self-publishers.
Well, I think kind of like the main thing is the community building, as I say, but kind of like what comes hand in hand with that is the marketing sort of side of things. This is the one thing that I consistently kind of had to try and explain to, as we know, and as people who are in the sort of network of kind of publishers that you and I are in, and kind of, and I maybe don't necessarily kind of always kind of like appear writing comments online, but I read a lot more posts than I comment on from publishers and what have you and stuff. And the general consensus is that there's a lot of people that will create a Kickstarter, push it out, and assume that kind of like even if they've got a great game, that it's gonna get 1,000 people, like 1,000 backers, or kind of like 10,000 backers, or kind of like make the millions of dollars, and it just doesn't work because nobody knows about it. You can make the best thing, but you don't tell anyone about it, they're not going to know. Kind of like, and Kickstarter isn't a shop window. Kind of like there's people are walking past the thing, but they're only kind of. I mean, I know with Kickstarter and stuff, unless I get an update or I find it on Facebook or this and the other, I rarely go to Kickstarter just to browse stuff. I'm kind of like I'm directed there, and I think that's the same for the majority of people. Like kind of like, so I think that kind of, as well as like building a community, which is a type of marketing, you need to pay a bit of money to kind of to Facebook or somewhere to get things moving, or kind of like, or develop some relationships with people who will give you marketing kind of like, or coverage for free, whatever you can do to kind of do it and get more kind of kind of traction and stuff.
Let's talk artwork for a bit. So, have there been any particular highlights for you in projects that you've not, you've just been hired to provide the artwork for?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, as I said to you before, was the Games Workshop thing. Like kind of like getting that as my kind of like my sort of grail client for. I've really wanted to work with for a long time, and that kind of finally happened this year, which was great. Cubicle 7 are kind of like a licensed company who can work with the Games Workshop IP on their roleplay games, so that's what I'm working for. So that has been a really big deal. I think one of the big ones when I was I did a little bit of work for League of Legends like a while back, which was sort of just as I was leaving the games industry, the video games industry, and that felt like another sort of big deal. But anytime you get kind of like something like that where you sort of feel like you get a little bit of recognition, or you kind of you feel like you've leveled up, kind of like sort of slightly, and so that's very cool.
Okay, well, what's it like now working for other publishers doing the artwork when you've seen the other side of it? You've done the publishing yourself. Has that sort of affected how the experience goes?
I want to kind of impart all the kind of like stuff that I've learned, but sometimes you probably sound like a big head, so I try not to. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these people, kind of like, when I think about kind of the advice I was given and stuff, it was kind of like, it was clinical, the advice I was given. And I think kind of sort of like, I'm more of an emotional thinker, so probably kind of sort of like, whereas Gonzalo would tell me this is the way to do it, I think kind of sort of like, my delivery of kind of like experience might be kind of more kind of like, sort of like, I think we should do this, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, it's not your company. You're just the artist. Shut the hell up. But like, I think kind of like it's nice. But also, I think I'm now able to anticipate some of the issues that manufacturers might have with artwork, which is cool, which I wouldn't have done before I made the game. So that's really helpful to kind of to have that and kind of be able to kind of like think ahead, and maybe kind of try and anticipate those losses of time that you can kind of find at the end of a project once it's kind of like just about to get shipped off to the manufacturer and stuff, and how that can really kind of affect delays and things.
All right. Do you have any game design projects in the pipeline?
Yeah, I do. I've got American football. I love American football, and I love monsters. So Blood Bowl is a natural fit for me. But I was really excited when I heard about Blood Bowl Team Manager. Have you played that game?
No, I haven't.
It's for geeks like me, kind of like who love like kind of fantasy Games Workshop stuff, and then kind of like American football. It's like a dream come true. And it's a good game. I do like it. But it wasn't quite what I was expecting, and I was like, do you know what? I'm going to design something that I kind of really wanted to play, where there's kind of sort of like drafting of players and kind of sort of like, kind of you're actually playing kind of mini games of it and stuff. So your drafting has an impact on kind of like what happens and this, that, and the other and stuff. And me and Scott Wisely, who works for Fanboy 3, I don't know if you know him, and he's actually just launched a book company called The Inquisitive Goblin, which is pretty cool. He did the logo for them the other day, actually. Yeah, he just helped me test it during the start of lockdown. I mean, so we were just basically playing it. The great thing is the game works, so that helped the testing and actually kind of enjoying it and stuff. But we played that a lot during lockdown, and that was really cool. But because I then sort of launched DoodleMeeple, again, it just took a back burner. So part of me thinks whether it's worthwhile taking it to another publisher and sort of running them through that. I think it's got legs, and I started to do the artwork for it, and I know that I want to do. There's about 150 players, and I want to do like 150 unique cards, kind of unique player cards and stuff. And each one was taking me about a day. I'm like, even if I don't get any other contracts in, it's going to take me a year to kind of put this together. So yeah, I don't know. Kind of sort of like, I'd still like to kind of like pursue that and do that at some point.
Cool. Yeah, we'll come on to Doodlemeeple in just a little bit. I'm going to change things up and we'll head into our quickfire round. Whoa!
Nice! Yeah,
so these are...
I'm not very good at that.
Well, no, you have to on this one. So all you have to do is first answer that comes into your head, and these are going to be much less complex questions.
Perfect. Yeah, cool.
Okay. Beer or wine?
Beer.
Favourite meal?
Chinese takeaway.
France or Spain?
Spain.
Books or films?
Films.
Biggest achievement?
Oh, children.
Favourite sport?
American football.
Yeah, I could have answered that one. Favourite board game convention?
UKG, I think. That's the one that I've got fondest memories of.
Okay, there you go. I always want to then, it's a
nice.
really stupid question, but I always have a follow-up then. I'm very interested with France or Spain, because it's a very ambiguous question.
Yeah.
So what did your answer to France or Spain when you said Spain, what did that mean?
I guess I probably, I speak more Spanish than I speak French, so that's probably an influencing thing. I think sort of maybe just the food I prefer. The kind of like it generally seems like a sunnier sort of country. So kind
you
of
don't like the French?
I think we've probably spent just generally just like the French. No, not at all. No, it's like south of France has been amazing when I've been there and stuff. I think I really like warm weather holidays. So.
Let's talk Doodlemeeple, because this is your
cool.
all-encompassing really project at the moment. So
yes.
It's not really a question, but tell us all about Doodlemeeple. What is it? What's it about? Sure.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about it, because it is it's something that I'm kind of massively invested in time-wise at the moment, and very excited about. So Doodlemeeple is a networking site essentially where you will make a profile whether you are the publisher of a game. And that could be someone who's small, like how I started out on my own and trying to find kind of sort of like ways of doing things, or you could be a larger publisher like yourself who has a few titles under the belt.
We definitely don't deserve that.
Or kind of Fantasy Flight or whoever kind of can use the site in the same way. Now, if you are, and this is from the publisher side right now, if you're looking for someone who a role that needs to be filled. For example, an artist on your game or a graphic designer. And this is why it particularly lends itself to people who are new to the industry, because they don't necessarily have that network available to rely on when you're kind of looking for new people to work with. We have all that there, and you can essentially kind of create a brief for a particular role. So say let's stick with artists because it's easy to kind of to visualize. You need to have some character designs done. for your board game, maybe just enough to get the Kickstarter out the door to kind of be able to show enough for a Kickstarter to say this is what we want to make, and kind of there will be more coming. So let's say 10 character designs in a fantasy kind of like world, and like kind of the usual fantasy kind of trope characters, blah, blah, blah. Now you can put that brief together with a bit more detail, and then you can go straight onto our kind of creative stable of artists, and then choose 5 different artists that you want to work with. The reason for this, now kind of this is why we don't do job boards or kind of anything like that, that kind of like just opens up to everybody, is this is based on my own experience as an artist, based on my own experience as a publisher, just a streamlined version of kind of everything. Because what I found as an artist was I could go onto a job board, so like say Board Game Geek, and not throwing shade on Board Game Geek because it's got to say it's a zillion uses that are great and I love it. But to find jobs, and this is where I think a lot of people kind of start off trying to find board game work. A post will go up on there, sort of say we need an artist and stuff. Now, like on any other job site, kind of thousands of people can apply to that job, and you are essentially kind of just creating a cookie cutter approach to kind of sort of like, here's my portfolio, this is what it is. You've probably not even read the brief properly, you just want the work, kind of sort of like, so you just chuck something at it and hope for the best. Because there's not time to do it because the chance of you getting that job is so slim that kind of like you just have to kind of like, it's a numbers game, right? Kind of like what have you. So the quality of response is never good. There isn't much of a relationship that's built there from the start. So kind of we were trying to kind of like counteract that. Now, from a publisher side of things, if you do put a job up on one of those job boards and you're getting thousands of requests and what have you, at that moment when you need that work, kind of sort of, which is usually on a tight deadline, or kind of you're trying to move things along and stuff, you're then having to kind of like filter through, let's face it, kind of like a lot of a combination of experienced or inexperienced kind of people applying for this role. If we're trying to be kind of fair to everybody, you try and give them all a response, and it's all time, right? Kind of sort of like, whereas if you can go on there and sort of say, she looks good, he looks good, she looks good, he looks good, kind of like, and then choose those people that you think are kind of suitable, then you've already cut down all of that kind of back and forth, and you can still compare the quotes between them. There's no reason that if you don't get what you're looking for from those people, that you can't kind of like go through the process again and kind of like keep that brief and use it again for somebody else. But it's just it allows you to do it in your own time and kind of like your own sort of kind of space essentially. So that's what Doodlemeeple is. It's a way of sort of publishers being able to find the people they need. So we've got everything from kind of like artists, sculptors, graphic designers, marketers, game developers, rules editors, voiceover people when you're doing the Kickstarter videos, kind of like video editors, campaign managers and stuff who might be able to help you with that too. We've got aspirations to do like loads more as well. So kind of like volunteers, maybe for kind of like for conventions. Because I know that's what I struggled with when I was doing conventions. I couldn't find any volunteers and stuff. But kind of like we will eventually build a role section where you can have volunteers. They can put themselves up there and say their minimum requirements are bed and board or whatever, and that's it sort of thing. Or kind of like just build those kind of sort of like those opportunities for people to do that. Because a lot of people who probably do want to volunteer for conventions don't know where to put themselves out there. Kind of like I certainly would have done when I was starting out trying to gain experience. So. Yeah, I think kind of like we just want to kind of expand, and we recently changed from having a kind of a commission model to a free model, which meant that initially, obviously, again, it's a business, and it has running costs and all that sort of stuff. And we needed to kind of like Tim, my business partner, who's a tech guy, built this bespoke platform. It has a WordPress front, but then as soon as you go into the platform, it's no longer WordPress. It's a completely from scratch built platform to connect people, and he spent like a year and a half building that sort of thing. So we need to kind of obviously kind of recoup some of that time, like kind of like and make some money from the whole thing. So we started out as a commission model. Now it's a common thing that I'm used to working with, and other industries are working. I don't just work in board games; I work in books, and I work in kind of video games and bits and pieces. If you work for an agency, there will be a percentage commission on that model and stuff, on your work, any contracts you take, because they found the work for you. Now, we thought that we'd be able to apply a similar kind of commission model to DoodleMeeple. I don't think, because it's such an independent kind of sort of business, like with sort of kind of smaller players working in it, the idea of kind of upping your your outgoings by X percentage of commission, it's just unpalatable, kind of like, and if you'll always take the easiest route, right? Kind of sort of like without being kind of like sort of sounding like what's the word? Detrimental, not detrimental, but kind of without kind of putting it down on things essentially. Like, I think that if you can see an avenue where you can kind of like you find someone on DoodleMeeple and then you just contact them outside of DoodleMeeple, then why wouldn't you to save yourself kind of X amount of commission? Like kind of like I think most people would, I think so. So eventually we just dropped it because we felt like rather than building this community of kind of sort of like like-minded people and kind of like this is the place where kind of like you actually get your game made, like kind of like this is the answer to kind of like the problem that you've been having. We became the police, kind of like we were just policing everything, and kind of like it was not fun. It wasn't. It sort of kind of like we felt like we were fighting against people rather than kind of trying to encourage people to kind of do something cool. So we just kind of dropped it. So now, like kind of like we are on a completely optional Patreon. So kind of people can support us if they'd like to, if they get some use out of the service. There are a few perks for Patreon kind of members and stuff, but there's nothing you can't do on the website that that Patreon members can do. So it's that's what we kind of changed to, and I think kind of sort of it's been really important for us to kind of sort of to do that because it feels now like it's our own little playground rather than having to be the police and like the enforcers and it's kind of like all that kind of boring stuff. Now it's kind of like what cool ideas can we come up with that are going to help people out, kind of sort of like and doing all these bits and pieces. We've got kind of aspirations to kind of sort of like to make it kind of fun to be on the site all the time. So kind of like little achievements and bits and pieces that you can do throughout and kind of like and kind of upgrade your profile and stuff. And so that's what we want to do, and kind of like because everyone's there to like kind of make games, so kind of why not make the whole process feel more kind of fun, like a game to do, like kind of do that. So publishers can find people. If you work in the board game industry as an artist or a developer or whatever, you can put yourself at free again, create a free profile, and find work on there. It's an extra avenue of work, and you don't have to pay for it. So I think kind of it's a no-brainer, right? Kind of like trying to find work. So whether you're a game designer who has published your own games, like me, but you want to design games for other people, you can put yourself there as a designer too. So loads and loads of different kind of opportunities for people to do that, and it's kind of being upgraded all the time. It's currently going through the process of kind of like moving from that commission model to the free model. So more stuff is being opened up, kind of like to encourage the community and stuff. So you'll see a lot more changes over the coming months once Tim's settled in Wales, where he's just moved today. Congratulations, Tim. So that's the long and short of it. It's a kind of a place to hopefully alleviate the concerns that people have about making board games and not having a community or a network around them to facilitate that, and to do that for free without any kind of worries about added costs. So
it's a win-win, and I've registered. I'm on there. It looks great. I just hope that it gains that traction. I completely get why you went initially with the commission, because that makes sense from a business perspective, and it just introduced that unfortunate dynamic of basically everyone using your site until the point at which they then hire the person, and then
exactly. It became a barrier of entry, I think, for a lot of people as well, because people would sort of see it and be like, even if you kind of like you're not told what the commission value is or what have you see commission, you're like, I don't want to pay for it, kind of like, and I mean, it started off and a lot of the feedback was like, why do you guys not do it like LinkedIn? And it's like, well, it's difficult because LinkedIn has like a billion users at this point, kind of sort of like, the marketing that like kind of like advertising kind of income they get from that is just insane. And that's how they kind of like have offices in London and Australia and everywhere else, this huge company. We can't afford to do that because no one's going to pay for advertising in a site that currently is very, very small. But obviously when we do get some more users and stuff, we are paying to kind of add kind of advertising to the site, kind of whether it's sort of like kind of things that people can opt into or kind of like various different things. But a lot of it will be kind of like helpful, similar to what we were talking about before, like kind of the lists of kind of like usable kind of like companies and stuff. So it might be that kind of like companies like manufacturers and stuff could be listed on there, and kind of maybe other services that kind of like you might need throughout the process, like fulfillment agents and all that sort of stuff. So there's avenues for us to kind of to get income in that way too, and I think kind of that's something we'd look at in the future. But for right now, I think kind of it's really important for us to build a community, kind of like, and I think kind of the rest will come. And so yeah, if you're an artist, or if you are a voiceover actor, or you have any experience in the board game industry in any role, we likely are carrying it. And if we're not, then give us a shout, and we kind of like we can make that happen. But yeah, it's an extra avenue for work for you guys. And if you're a publisher, whether you're new or old, I know that kind of like speaking to, say, Gonzalo, going back to him at Thundergriff, he's like, he gets CVs through from kind of people in the industry all the time, but never, or not necessarily when he wants them. So to have a database where you can just go in and find those people the day that you're like, oh God, we need to get this graphic design out the door, like kind of like, who do we get to do it? And you can go on there and you just quickly browse and you find someone and you send it off, and within 24 hours you can be working with that person. It just makes life a lot more simple. So that's kind of like for the bigger publishing houses, like kind of that's what we're hoping to kind of achieve for them. So
nice.
Yeah, but yeah, thanks for the opportunity to talk about them, to talk about ourselves, and I hope kind of that seems like a valuable resource to a lot of people. And
I really hope so. I think so. Yeah, definitely. Just
thanks, man.
People need to know about it. So where do they go to find DoodleMeeple?
So doodlemeeple.com is the website. So you'll find a place to register there, and then you'll get taken through to the platform, and that's where you can start looking at people. You can start perusing our kind of creatives without actually making a brief, so you can have a little sort of snoop around. And you can also find us on social media, so you can find us on Facebook. If you just search for DoodleMeeple, you can follow us on Instagram, you can find either DoodleMeeple, and Twitter, and LinkedIn, and kind of everywhere you could imagine. On YouTube too. We're kind of slowly starting to kind of do those bits. I've already kind of earmarked Peter for an interview back with DoodleMeeple when we get that up and running. So hopefully I'd like to talk to him about kind of the retail side of games that he's working on as well. That'd be really cool. Find us, come and join. There's no fees to worry about, so just get involved.
Awesome. All right, we're on to our last question, and it's
cool.
It's a regular question, but a slightly tailored one. So I'm very conscious of equality and diversity, and those being good things. So I would like to ask you if you can think of a good female guest for 20 questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can think of several probably. One who, and she's mega busy because I'm trying to get on her show at the moment, is and Julie Smith. I don't know if you know her. She has worked for Asmodee in the past. She now works for Asmodee's book wing, which is called Aconite Books. But she also has her own like kind of painting channel, and she talks to people kind of like in the industry too, kind of on her channel. And I think she just does a lot of cool stuff, and she's been really, really awesome in kind of like getting us kind of like contacts and stuff for DoodleMeeple. She's put me in touch with a lot of good people. And actually another one for you, Kate Evans.
Yes.
You know Kate Evans?
Well, not really personally, but yes, I've been on a few video things with her, and
yeah, great. I mean, I'm sure that kind of like she would like to come and talk about UKG with guys and stuff, but she's also been like mega helpful. She introduced us to some other kind of like people who kind of help with marketing and stuff.
Yeah. She's the big marketing buff at UKG Games, I suppose. So, yeah,
she is. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, she's another one to get in touch with, and I could probably think of 1,000 more. I'll leave you with those two for the time being.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's our 20 questions, and the time is up. But I'd like to say a huge thank you to Jamie Noble-Frier for giving us your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Peter. No, I appreciate you having me on, and probably have to do a lot of editing now to get those questions down to a palatable size.
I'm going to do a bit of editing on this one. We'll have to see how it goes.
Cool. Okay, thanks, man. Take it easy.
Thank you. If people want to search you out, where should they go?
I think right now you can find me on doodlemeeple.com. If you're looking for any artwork specifically from me, and you know, kind of, you're very welcome to kind of find the artist on doodlemeeple.com because I'm on there too. But you can find me at thenobleartist.com.
Brilliant. Okay, cheers, and until next time then, viewers, goodbye.
Thanks, Peter.
You've been watching Board Game Hub. Please remember to like and subscribe if you like the content. Until next time, farewell.